A new state law creating new questions for Kansas school districts next year.
Yeah, tonight the Wichita and Andover school boards will discuss the implications of the law, which allows students to attend their schools regardless of what district they live in. Now, morning reporter Max Dutton is joining us live now with more on the district and these changes. Hey, Max.
In Andover and across the state. Now, currently, Andover is one of about 12 districts in the state that doesn't have any open enrollment policies. Last week, they held their public forum, and the main question people are asking is, what will the district's capacity be set at? Here's what you need to know. If you apply for open enrollment, you're not guaranteed to get admission into any school. Students' families can apply for a transfer into a different school in June of 2024 before that fall semester begins. If the number of applicants to a district exceeds their capacity, those applicants will be randomly selected by July 15th. It's also important to note that students cannot be admitted or denied to a district based on gender, ethnicity, nationality, income, or disabilities. Districts also cannot admit students based on athletic ability or measure of achievement. In terms of transportation, those students who are admitted that live outside of the district will be responsible for their own transportation. R. Gutierrez, the KASB president, explains how districts across Kansas are determining their capacity.
We want to determine what's our best class size, and that varies by school district. You know, some intentionally need to have larger class sizes and some want to have smaller class sizes. And then you look at the number of teachers you have, and in a teacher shortage that can vary from year to year.
And as we mentioned earlier tonight, Wichita Public Schools will have their own public forum where they set their policies. Also important to note that across Kansas, those districts have to have the policies in place by January of 2024. Britton.